The small human settlement on the edge of the galaxy was not used to visitors, let alone something as unusual as the alien ship that appeared out of nowhere. It was a quiet morning, the air thick with the scent of fresh grass, when the massive shadow of the ship darkened the town square. People stopped what they were doing and stared up in shock. The ship was sleek, silver, and shaped like nothing anyone had ever seen before. It hovered above the ground with a low hum, as though it had always been there and just decided to reveal itself now. At first, there was panic. People ran into their homes, locking doors, shouting warnings to their children. But amidst the chaos, there was a sense of curiosity, too. No one had expected an alien presence, but the humans on this planet were not strangers to space. This was the age of discovery, after all, and humans had begun to venture into the stars, meeting various species, yet an unannounced rival like. This was something new. Among the crowd, a tall, confident woman stood. Her name was Grace, and she was the leader of this community. She was quick to act, her voice strong as she calmed the people around her. Stay calm, everyone. I'll handle this. With a steady breath, she made her way toward the center of the square, where the ship had finally landed. The ship's door slowly opened with a hiss. Standing in the entrance was an alien figure, tall and striking. She had an otherworldly grace about her, her skin a soft shade of blue that seemed to shimmer in the light. Her eyes were dark and deep, almost like they could see right through you. She wore a long flowing robe that moved like liquid, her presence commanding the attention of every single person in the crowd. Greetings, the alien said, her voice calm and elegant. I come in peace, Grace. Standing at the front of the crowd, narrowed her eyes but stepped forward. Who are you? And why are you here? The alien princess smiled faintly, her lips curving upward in a way that seemed almost reassuring. I am Lyra. I come from a distant planet, and I need your help. The crowd remained silent, a mix of confusion and fear hanging in the air. Grace took a deep breath, trying to read the alien's intentions. What kind of help do you need? Lyra's expression grew more serious, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. I have come because of a misunderstanding, she began. There is a rumor among the galaxy's many species, one that has spread to your planet. The rumor is that I have come to take your children. Her words caused an immediate stir. Gasps echoed from the humans in the crowd, and the fear that had started to come returned with full force. Grace's eyes flashed with suspicion. What are you talking about? Why would anyone believe such a thing? I don't know, Lyra admitted, but I am here to put the rumor to rest. I do not want your child out. But that is not true. Humans have strength in many ways, and it is not in the children that I seek assistance. The rumor was a mistake, a misunderstanding. Grace could sense the sincerity in Lyra's voice, but the doubt still lingered. Then what do you want from us? Lyra took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing slightly. I need your help to stop an enemy faction. There's a war brewing, one that could destroy both our people, but we cannot win without understanding each other. That is why I have come to ask for your trust. The silence that followed was heavy. Some people in the crowd looked hesitant, their faces full of uncertainty. Others whispered among themselves, still fearful of the unknown. But there was a quiet sense of curiosity, too. What did the princess want? Was she telling the truth? Grace stood in front of Lyra, her mind racing. She had no reason to fully trust the alien yet, but something in her gut told her that there was more to this story than the rumors suggested. The choice was hers, and she knew it. She could either turn this alien away, or she could try to understand what was really happening. After a long pause, Grace nodded. All right, I'll listen. But know this: if you have come to deceive us, you won't be welcomed here. Lyra's face softened, a grateful smile tugging at her lips. Thank you, Grace. I will prove to you that I am here for peace. The princess stepped back, signaling for her attendants to join her. Grace turned back to the crowd, her heart heavy with the weight of the decision ahead. She had no idea what was coming, but she knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning of a much bigger story. The following day, the tension in the small town was palpable. People had gathered in the main hall, a large wooden building that stood at the heart of the settlement. There were whispers everywhere, and eyes returned toward the stage where Grace and the alien princess, Lyra, were about to meet in front of the entire community. The air was thick with questions, but Grace remained calm as she took her place in front of the crowd. Lyra had promised that she would explain everything, but the fear and uncertainty still gripped the people. The rumors about her taking children had spread like wildfire. It was hard for anyone to believe that this alien, with her delicate features and mysterious aura, could be anything but a threat. But Grace had made the decision to hear her out, to give her the chance to explain. The door to the hall opened, and Lyra stepped in. Her soft blue skin shimmered under the light, and her robe flowed elegantly around her as she walked toward the stage. She was tall and graceful, moving with an almost hypnotic calm. Despite her beauty, there was an intensity in her eyes, a quiet strength that made Grace wonder just how much this alien had been through. The room grew silent as Lyra took her place beside Grace. The princess gave a small nod of gratitude before turning to face the crowd. "I know many of you are frightened," Lyra began, her voice soft yet filled with authority. "The rumors you have heard are not true. I do not want your children, nor have I come to harm your people in any way." She paused, allowing the words to settle in the room before continuing. "What I have come to ask is your help. There is a war on the horizon, a war that could destroy not only my people, but yours as well. The factions that I spoke of yesterday believe that humans are the key to saving us all, but they have misunderstood your power." Grace watched the crowd carefully. Some faces showed confusion, others suspicion. A few individuals whispered to each other, their voices hushed but anxious. Grace could see that convincing them was going to be difficult, but she knew she had to stay calm, stay focused. "You mentioned that my people are misunderstood," Grace said, her voice steady. "Can you explain more about that? What exactly do you need from us?" Lyra nodded, her expression serious. "My people are not like humans. We are not bound by the same rules of emotion and connection. We are a species that values strength above all else, but not in the way you might think. Our strength is not in numbers or technology, though we are powerful in those areas, but in our understanding of the universe. We have spent centuries studying the stars, searching for a way to bring peace to the galaxy." She paused for a moment, her gaze sweeping over the crowd. "The factions within my world, however, believe that only by conquering and controlling other species can we achieve true power. They think that by taking the young of other species, they can harness their potential and gain the upper hand. But this belief is wrong. It is based on a fear of what we do not understand." Grace listened intently. It was hard to imagine that a species like Lyra's could be so divided, but Grace had learned long ago that fear often led to misunderstanding, even among the most advanced of civilizations. "Why are you telling us this?" Grace asked, her eyes meeting Lyra's. "Why come to us with this information? What can we possibly do to help you?" Lyra's expression softened, a hint of sadness in her eyes. "Because you are different. Your species has something my people do not: empathy. You are capable of understanding one another, of forming bonds that go beyond power or conquest. It is your empathy that makes you strong, and it is that strength that we need." The silence in the room grew thicker. Some people were nodding, trying to understand the princess's words, while others remained skeptical. But there was no denying that Lyra's words carried weight. She spoke with a passion that couldn't be ignored. "I know that asking for your trust is difficult," Lyra continued, "but I cannot do this alone. If my people are to change, if the factions that believe in conquest are to be stopped, I need your help. I need you to show them that strength is not in power or control. It is in understanding, in unity." Grace took a deep breath, her mind racing. The princess's plea was powerful, and it made sense. It wasn't just about the people of her planet anymore. It was about the future of all life in the galaxy. If they didn't act, there could be far-reaching consequences. "I understand your words," Grace said finally, "but this is not an easy decision. You're asking us to stand with you against your own people. That's not something we can take lightly." Lyra nodded, her face serious. "I know, and I don't expect you to make a decision today, but I ask that you think carefully about what is at stake. My people need a new path, and you can help us find it. There was a long pause as the crowd absorbed the gravity of Lyra's words. Grace could feel the eyes of the entire settlement on her, waiting for her response. She looked out over the room, her mind swirling with the possibilities. Could they trust this alien princess? Was there enough hope to believe that change was possible? As she met Lyra's gaze once more, Grace made up her mind. I will help you, she said, but only if we are sure that you are telling the truth. If we are going to risk everything, we need to know everything. Lyra smiled, relief washing over her face. You will not regret this, Grace. Together, we can change the course of history. On her, the war Lyra spoke of sounded like a battle of more than just armies. It was a battle for hearts and minds. Grace knew that if they were to stand a chance, they would need more than just weapons. They would need unity, and that was something the princess had promised. After a long day of meetings and discussions with the council, Grace finally decided to meet with Lyra again. It was time for answers. There were too many questions that needed to be addressed, and the princess had made it clear that she was willing to share whatever information they needed. If they were going to stand together, Grace needed to know everything. That evening, Grace and Lyra met in the quietest corner of the settlement, away from the prying eyes of the people. The sun had just set, casting an orange glow over the trees, and a cool breeze swept through the air. Lyra stood by the window, her eyes gazing out at the landscape. You have questions, she said without turning around. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. The princess knew that Grace was still searching for answers. I do, Grace replied, walking over to stand beside her. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about the war, the factions, and how you want our help. But I need to understand more. What exactly is at stake here? What happens if your people do not change? Lyra's expression softened. She turned to face Grace, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. My people have been divided for centuries. Some believe in the old ways, in conquering and controlling others to maintain power. These factions have grown stronger over time, and they have begun targeting other species to gain what they think is the key to ultimate strength. Younglings? They believe that by taking the youth of other civilizations, they can harness their potential and create an unstoppable force. Grace frowned. But you don't believe in that. No, Lyra said, shaking her head. I believe in unity, in cooperation. Strength comes from understanding, not domination. But these factions do not see it that way. They are blinded by their own fears, their own desire for control. Grace took a moment to process this. So, if your people continue down this path, what happens? The war will destroy everything, Lyra said quietly. My people will continue to fight among themselves, and they will drag others into the conflict. There will be no winners. We will all be lost in the chaos. The weight of the princess's words hung heavy in the air. Grace could see how much this meant to Lyra, how deeply she believed that her people needed to change. It wasn't just about power. It was about survival. I can see you care deeply for your people, Grace said, her voice softer now. But why come to us? Why come to a small human settlement? What makes you think we can help? Lyra's gaze met Grace's, and for the first time, Grace saw the vulnerability in the alien's eyes. Because humans are unlike any other species in the galaxy, Lyra replied, your strength is in your bonds. You form connections, not just with each other, but with everything around you. You understand what it means to fight for something greater than yourselves. Grace felt a sense of pride at Lyra's words, but also a nagging sense of doubt. But we're just a small settlement. We don't have the military might that other species have. How can we possibly help? Lyra smiled slightly, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. It's not about military might. It's about belief. The factions that oppose me believe in the power of fear and control. But you, Grace, and your people, you understand that strength lies in unity. If you can show my people that cooperation is stronger than conquest, it will be the turning point. You don't need weapons. You need courage. Grace thought about this for a moment. The princess's words made sense. It wasn't just about fighting a war with weapons, it was about fighting it with ideas, with compassion. This was something humanity understood well. They had faced many challenges and had always overcome them through unity and perseverance. But how do we start? Grace asked, her mind racing. How do we convince your people that this is the way forward? Lyra's eyes sparkled with determination. We start by showing them we can't change their minds overnight, but we can begin to build a bridge. If you and your people can stand with me, if you can demonstrate that peace is possible, we will show them that there is another way. Grace nodded slowly. I understand. But this won't be easy. There are still many people here who don't trust you, and the rumors, they won't be easy to overcome. Lyra looked out the window again, her expression thoughtful. I know, but the truth has a way of making itself known. All we can do is show them what is possible. Grace felt a spark of hope ignite within her. Maybe this was the beginning of something bigger. Maybe, just maybe, humanity could help change the galaxy. I'm with you, Grace said firmly. We'll do whatever it takes. Lyra smiled, a look of relief washing over her. Thank you, Grace. You are not alone in this, and so, the first step toward change had been taken. The road ahead would be difficult, but Grace felt ready for the challenge. Together, with the strength of both their peoples, they would try to build a future that was not bound by fear or control, but by understanding and unity. The morning after her meeting with Lyra, Grace woke up with a deep sense of uncertainty. There was still so much to think about. Her mind kept returning to the princess's words, strength comes from understanding, not domination. But could the people of the settlement understand that? Could they embrace this vision of peace? As leader of the settlement, Grace had always been the one to make tough decisions, but this felt different. She was about to lead her people into something far greater than anything they had faced before. She was considering an alliance with an alien princess, one who was caught in the middle of a galaxy-wide conflict. The weight of this responsibility was enough to make her hesitate. But Grace knew one thing for sure. She couldn't make this decision alone. That afternoon, Grace called a meeting with the council. The council was made up of the elders and influential members of the settlement, and their approval was essential if she were to take the next steps. She knew they would have concerns. Fear was always easier than trust, and the rumors about Lyra had already caused tension. The council hall was small but crowded. As Grace walked in, the chatter died down, and all eyes were on her. She took a deep breath before speaking. I've met with Lyra again, she began, her voice steady, and I believe she's telling the truth. Me, she's genuine, and if we turn our backs now, we could be sealing our fate. Garrett didn't respond immediately, but the doubt was still clear in his eyes. Another council member, a woman named Eliza, spoke up. I've heard the stories, Eliza said quietly. The stories about children being taken. It's hard to forget that. How do we know she won't just go back to her people and tell them to take us? How can we risk our children's safety? Grace nodded, acknowledging the fear that was shared by many. I know it's hard. The rumors have caused a lot of pain, and I can't pretend that they don't matter. But I've spoken to her, and I believe her when she says she's here to stop the factions who want to take the children. She's on our side, and we need to help her. There was a long silence. The council members looked at each other, weighing their options. Some looked uncertain, while others still seemed set in their fear. Grace's heart pounded in her chest. She knew the risks, but she also knew the risks of doing nothing. Finally, Garrett spoke again, his voice softer now. I understand why. You want to help her, Grace. But what if it's a mistake? What if we're putting our people in danger? Grace took a step forward, her voice firm but calm. I've lived my life making tough choices. This is one of them. But I believe that the only way forward is together. We need to trust that Lyra is telling the truth, and if she isn't, we will face it together. We cannot live in fear forever. The room was quiet for a long time, and Grace could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her. But in the end, the council members nodded one by one. They didn't all agree, but they knew Grace was right. The settlement had to take a stand. We'll support you, Grace, Eliza said finally. But we will need to be cautious. We cannot let our guard down completely. Grace nodded. feeling a sense of relief wash over her. I agree. But we take the first step now, together. That evening, Grace gathered the community in the town square. The news had spread quickly, and the people were anxious to hear what had been decided. The whispers of doubt and fear were still present, but Grace could feel the shift in the air. The council had made their decision, and now it was time for the rest of the settlement to know. Standing at the front of the crowd, Grace raised her hand for silence. When the murmurs died down, she spoke. People of the settlement, Grace began, her voice steady. I've met with Princess Lyra again, and I believe she is telling the truth. We have the chance to help end the war that threatens her people, and our help could change the fate of more than just our settlement. This is not an easy decision, and I understand the fear and doubt that many of you feel. But after much thought and discussion with the council, we've agreed to stand with Lyra. A hush fell over the crowd. Grace could see the surprise in many of their eyes, and she knew the weight of her words had settled in. She continued, We are not alone in this. We will face whatever comes next together, and we will protect our people. I trust that we can make the right choice. I ask that you trust me as well. The crowd remained quiet for a moment, then began to stir. Some nodded, others exchanged glances. Grace could sense that this was only the beginning, but she also felt a sense of unity that hadn't been there before. They might not all agree, but they were willing to try, and that, she realized, was all they could ask for. Lyra had been right about one thing. Strength wasn't in power or force. It was in the courage to stand together, to face the unknown. Grace knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but it was a road they would walk together. The decision had been made. Grace and the council had agreed to stand with Lyra, but the real test was yet to come. There was a sense of unease hanging over the settlement, like a storm that had yet to break. The people were still divided, some willing to trust Lyra, while others remained fearful of the unknown. The rumors, though dismissed by some, still lingered in the minds of many for days. The settlement went about its daily life, trying to find a sense of normalcy amid the uncertainty. Grace met with Lyra frequently, discussing strategies and gathering information. The princess's words had been clear. They needed to show unity, to prove that cooperation was stronger than fear. But there were still so many unknowns. It was during one of these meetings that things took an unexpected turn. It started with a loud crash late at night. Grace was in her office, reviewing reports. When she heard the noise, it was followed by shouts and the sound of running feet. Panic spread quickly through the settlement. Grace's heart raced as she rushed outside to find out what was happening. By the time she reached the center of the settlement, she saw the chaos unfolding. Several people were running toward the entrance, shouting that something was wrong. Grace's eyes immediately found Lyra, who was standing at the front, her face tense with concern. What's happening? Grace asked as she reached her side. Lyra's gaze was fixed on the horizon. I believe the factions that I warned you about have arrived. They have come to take what they think is theirs. Take what? Grace asked, fear rising in her chest. My people believe that your children hold the key to our future. They think by taking them, they can control the next generation, ensuring their survival. Lyra said, her voice tight with urgency. They believe in the rumors. They are trying to make them real. Grace's stomach twisted. The nightmare that she had feared was happening now. The thought of children being taken by force was something she couldn't bear to think about. We have to stop them, Grace said firmly, her voice resolute. Lyra nodded. I will do whatever it takes. But we need to act quickly. They're not here for peaceful negotiations. The sound of heavy footsteps grew louder, and Grace's heart pounded in her chest. She turned to see a group of armed figures emerging from the shadows. They were tall, their eyes glowing with an unsettling light. These were no ordinary soldiers. They were the elite of the faction, the ones who had come to take what they believed was rightfully theirs. Without thinking, Grace rushed forward, her mind focused on one thing, protecting the children. She found the nearest family and told them to get their children to safety. Panic had already begun to spread, and people were running in every direction, some trying to hide, others simply running away. The first shots rang out, and the battle for the settlement began. Grace didn't have much time to think. She grabbed a weapon from one of the soldiers who had fallen, rallying the defenders to stand firm. The settlement's makeshift defenses had been built with peace in mind, not war, but they would have to work with what they had. Lyra, standing tall beside Grace, moved with the grace and precision of a warrior. Her people were skilled in combat, and it was clear that she wasn't just a princess, she was a fighter. She fought alongside the humans, her alien abilities giving her an edge. She moved through the chaos, using her knowledge of the attackers' tactics to outmaneuver them. For what felt like hours, the battle raged. The attackers were relentless. Their goal clear: take the children and leave the settlement in ruins. But the humans, now standing together with Lyra and her loyal followers, refused to give in. Grace fought with everything she had, her heart focused on one thing: protecting her people. Then, in the midst of the chaos, Grace saw something that froze her in place. A small child had been taken by one of the attackers. The figure had her in his grasp, and they were making their way toward the ship that had landed outside the settlement. No, Grace screamed, rushing toward them. She ran as fast as she could. But the distance was too great. She knew she wouldn't make it in time. But then, just as all hope seemed lost, a blur of motion intercepted the attacker. Lyra had appeared beside them, her eyes blazing with determination. With a swift move, she knocked the attacker aside. Freeing the child from his grip, Lyra knelt down, her face gentle as she comforted the child. "You're safe now," she said, her voice soft. The child, shaking but unharmed, nodded and clung to her. Grace reached them moments later, breathless, but relieved. "Thank you," she said to Lyra, her voice thick with emotion. Lyra gave a small smile. Though the intensity of the moment hadn't passed, this isn't over yet. They will come again. Grace turned to see that the battle wasn't over. But the tide had shifted. The attackers were retreating, their mission to capture the children thwarted. The humans had fought back with all their might, and they had succeeded for now. But the danger wasn't gone. The factions that had tried to take the children were still out there, and they would not give up easily. Grace knew that this was only the beginning. The rumors had brought the war to their doorstep, and it was only a matter of time before it escalated even further. "We won't stop fighting," Grace said firmly, turning to Lyra. "We'll protect our children. We'll protect our home." Lyra nodded, her expression unwavering. "Together, we can stop this." The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The settlement had survived the first attack, but they knew they had to prepare for the challenges ahead. With Lyra by their side, the humans were stronger than they had ever been before. But the road ahead was still uncertain. For now, they would rest, but tomorrow, they would prepare to face whatever came next. The night after the attack was quiet. The settlement was in ruins, but it was alive. The battle had been hard, and many of the town's people were shaken, but they had held their ground. Grace sat by a small campfire, her mind racing. The fear that had gripped the settlement only days before had turned into something stronger: determination. She wasn't alone. Lyra sat next to her, her expression serious but calm, as usual. The princess had proven herself in battle. She was not just a leader, she was a warrior, skilled in ways Grace had never imagined. Her alien abilities had helped turn the tide in their favor. But they both knew this was far from over. The factions that had attacked were only a small part of the larger threat. The war was just beginning, and Grace knew that it wasn't something they could win on their own. "We have to prepare," Lyra said, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, her eyes never leaving the fire. "The factions will regroup. They won't stop until they get what they want." Grace nodded. No, we can't afford to let our guard down. We need more support," Lyra continued. "My people are divided. The factions that want to take children, they're powerful. They'll try again, and next time, they'll bring more force. I need you to help me reach out to those who believe in peace, those who want to stop this war before it destroys everything." Grace looked at her. "You're asking us to fight alongside you in a war that's not even ours. I don't know how we can convince anyone else to join us." Lyra turned to face her. "This war is everyone's. If we let the factions win, they'll come for more than just children. They'll conquer all who resist. They'll keep spreading their control until nothing is left but destruction. If we stand together, we can stop them. But it has to be now. Grace could hear the urgency in her voice. The princess was right. This was no longer just about protecting their children. It was about survival, about preventing the spread of war and fear to every corner of the galaxy. They needed to act, and they needed allies. I'll do whatever I can, Grace said firmly. I don't know how we'll do it, but we'll try. We'll start by contacting the other human colonies. If they know what's at stake, they'll help. Lyra smiled, a glimmer of hope shining in her eyes. That's all I ask. We must show that humanity can lead not through force, but through unity. The factions believe that power comes from control, but your people have already proven that strength lies in standing together. The next few days were spent preparing for the difficult task ahead. Grace reached out to the other human colonies, sending messages to leaders and diplomats, explaining the situation and urging them to take action. Some responded with skepticism, but others, those who had heard about the recent attack, were willing to listen. Slowly, the human colonies began to form an alliance with the settlement. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was a start. Meanwhile, Lyra worked tirelessly to reach out to her own people. She sent word to the factions that opposed the war, hoping to convince them to join her cause. It was a dangerous move. She had no idea how the factions would respond, and there was always the risk that they would see her as a traitor. But she had made her decision. She would fight for peace, no matter the cost. As the days turned into weeks, the alliance between the humans and Lyra's supporters grew stronger. The settlement became a hub for the resistance. Humans and aliens worked side by side, training and strategizing. Grace saw the change in the people around her. The fear had not disappeared, but it had been replaced by something else: resolve. They were no longer just fighting for survival, they were fighting for a future. One afternoon, as the sun set over the settlement, Grace and Lyra stood together, looking out over the horizon. The sky was painted with shades of pink and orange, a stark contrast to the darkness that had come before. "You've done more than I could have asked," Lyra said softly. "This alliance, it's stronger than I ever thought possible." Grace glanced at her, a small smile tugging at her lips. "We've done it together, but we still have a long way to go." Lyra nodded. "Yes, the real battle is ahead. The factions will come, but we're ready. We've shown them that we won't back down." "We're not alone anymore," Grace said, her voice filled with pride. "And that's what will make all the difference." The next day, a message arrived. One of the factions had agreed to meet with Lyra, an opportunity to negotiate, to bring an end to the conflict before it escalated further. It was a risky move, but it was a chance they couldn't afford to miss. Grace and Lyra stood side by side as they prepared to face the next step. This was only the beginning, but the alliance had been formed. The people of the settlement, the humans, and the loyal supporters of Lyra's cause together. They would fight for a future where peace was possible. As the first steps of the negotiation began, Grace realized something. It wasn't just the strength of their weapons or tactics that would win this war, it was the strength of their unity. They had proven that they were stronger together, and now they would use that strength to change the galaxy. The morning of the meeting with the factions arrived, and the air was thick with tension. The settlement had done everything it could to prepare, but everyone knew that the next few hours would determine the future of both their people. In Lyra's, Grace stood in the center of the settlement, watching as the last few people made their way to the meeting area. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting long shadows across the ground. But even the beauty of the dawn couldn't ease the knot of anxiety in her stomach. Lyra stood beside her, her posture regal and calm, but there was an unmistakable edge to her gaze. Grace could tell that she was just as nervous as everyone else. After all, this wasn't just a negotiation, it was a battle for the future. "We've done everything we can," Grace said, trying to steady her nerves. "Now it's time to see if we've made the right choice." Lyra gave a small nod, her eyes never leaving the horizon. "This is only the first step. There's still much to be done. But if this works, We will show the factions that peace is the only way forward." They had set up a neutral meeting ground, a large open area at the edge of the settlement. The human colonies had sent representatives, and Lyra had brought supporters from her side as well. The hope was that the factions who had already caused so much fear would see that their war only led to more destruction. The challenge was convincing them to stand down before the galaxy was lost to conflict. Grace took a deep breath and turned toward the others. "It's time," she said, her voice steady. Though her heart raced, Lyra walked ahead, her alien followers following close behind. The humans fell in step behind her, forming a loose but determined line. The factions would be arriving soon, and Grace couldn't help but wonder if this would be the turning point. She glanced at Lyra again, who met her gaze with a slight smile. "We're ready," Lyra said softly, as if reassuring herself as much as Grace. "Let's make this work." The arrival of the faction leaders brought an uneasy stillness. They were tall, imposing figures with sharp features, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. They didn't speak as they walked past the group, but there was a clear sense of superiority in their every movement. Their silence was deafening, but it didn't stop the humans and Lyra's supporters from standing their ground. The tension in the air was palpable. The leader of the faction stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the gathered crowd. He was tall, his skin a deep shade of red, his armor gleaming in the light. Grace's heart raced as he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "I do not understand why we are here, Princess," the leader said, his eyes locking with Lyra. "You come to us, asking for peace, yet you stand with the humans. Why have you chosen to ally with them?" Lyra's response was measured, her voice calm but firm. "Because peace is the only way forward. Your methods have brought nothing but suffering and fear. The rumors you spread about humans and their children, they are lies. We are not here to conquer, to control. We are here to show that strength lies in unity, not domination." The leader's expression hardened, but he didn't interrupt. Lyra continued, her voice steady, yet full of conviction. "We've seen the damage that this war has caused. We've seen how the factions believe that power comes from control, from taking what isn't theirs. But we know that true power lies in understanding and cooperation. I stand here today with humans because they understand this. They understand that no one wins a war, only destruction follows." The leader narrowed his eyes. "You are naive, Princess. The galaxy is not a place for peace. It is a place for strength." Grace stepped forward, her voice strong. "You're wrong. The galaxy is a place for unity, for working together. We've shown you that. We've shown you that the strength of one is nothing compared to the strength of many." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We're not asking you to surrender. We're asking you to choose a different path." The silence that followed was long and heavy. The faction leader turned to his advisors, whispering among them. Grace could feel the weight of the moment. Would they listen? Would they change their ways? Finally, the leader turned back to them, his face unreadable. "You have one chance," he said coldly. "Prove that this unity is more powerful than we believe. We will give you a chance to show that peace can work. But if you fail, the war will continue." Lyra's face softened, a hint of relief in her eyes. "Thank you," she said simply. "You won't regret this." The faction leader nodded once and turned to leave, signaling that the meeting was over. As he walked away, his followers followed suit, but there was a moment of hesitation in their steps. It was clear that this wasn't the victory they had hoped for, but it was a significant shift, a crack in the foundation of their beliefs. Grace watched them leave, her heart pounding. In her chest, it wasn't over yet, but it was a beginning. They had made their case, and for the first time, it felt like they might have a chance. Lyra turned to Grace, her expression filled with quiet determination. "We've won the first battle," she said softly, "but there's much more to do." Grace nodded, her eyes filled with resolve. "We'll face whatever comes next, together." And as the factions retreated, the humans and Lyra's supporters stood side by side, stronger than ever before. The battle for the galaxy was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, hope seemed possible.